Hi, Frederick.
Good morning, folks.
Yeah, it's what, afternoon there, right?
Yes, 3 p.m. So we haven't switched to daylight time savings yet. So this meeting is 1 hour earlier than usual, which is a good thing. But hey, it's a great way to end the work week and get ready for the weekend.
Yeah. I'm still trying to get more. There was a few folks who reached out to me about like, hey, I can't make this meeting, because they're all California, and like, hey, I can't make this meeting because it's super early. Can you make it later? And then I said, okay, cool. Can you submit something to the doodle poll? And then very few of them have actually submitted anything to the doodle poll.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, we have a few folks on the West Coast in my team as well, and it's always, a battle to find a good time for a meeting because that sort of tiny intersection is usually crowded. Did we just lose audio from you, Mike?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry, I just somebody just messaged me about what does it take to join the meeting, and I'm just like, nope, nothing. You can just join the meeting.
Yeah, click a button. Imagine
yeah,
wonderful technology.
Yeah, while folks are joining, I'm going to. Oh, what happened to there was a document attached to this thing. Oh, right, because I need to reach back out to the ops folks to try and fix that.
Yeah, but the meeting link, the link to the document is at least pinned in the salsa tooling chat.
Yep. All right, so let me just do the old switcheroo and. All right. And yeah, feel free to add your name to the attendance.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So yeah, we can get started. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. It'll be uploaded to YouTube sometime soon. And your participation in this meeting is an agreement to abide by the OpenSSF Code of Conduct. Well, okay. So first off, is there any new members who want to introduce themselves?
Yes, of course. I'm Michele Buccarella from Italy. I'm working at SIGAP. SIGAP is a Kubernetes company. We have our own distribution of Kubernetes, and I'm here to because we are digging a lot in the past 5 months about supply chain security. We contributed for the Italian version of the supply chain security book on the CNCF tag security repo. And I'm here just to know more about the SLSA framework, tooling, and all the stuff around. So it's a complex topic, so I just want to learn more.
All right, cool. Glad to have you. And I'm a contributor. I was a contributor to the English version of the supply chain, the tag security supply chain book. Cool. All right. So as I guess there's not a lot on the agenda for today. Just post this again in here. Not a lot on the agenda for today. I know one of the big things is, and good for some people, bad for others, looking at maybe rescheduling the meeting or trying to have some sort of meeting that's also convenient for some of the folks who are out in California. And the reason being is that a lot of the folks who are currently writing a lot of the salsa tools, like a lot of the ones that are, in our this underneath the SLSA framework all work out of California. And so they've been working out of the West Coast. And so they've been asking, hey, is there a more convenient time to run this meeting? And so there's a doodle poll that's up. I posted it in Slack. And so, yeah, feel free to put stuff in that poll, and we'll see. I mean, I don't know if maybe this meeting is still fine for coordination, and maybe we have kind of like a meeting that's a bit more convenient for some of the individual projects, just to kind of chat through stuff. I once again, I don't want to necessarily say, hey, we should have more meetings, but trying to make something that's convenient for everybody is obviously impossible, but we might be able to still maybe make something like every other week or something like that is a meeting convenient for folks West Coast. Every other meeting is a meeting that's convenient for folks in Europe and so on. Because also now we have a few folks who I believe from Oracle who have been working on Macaron, which is a tool that they've been building out that can generate reports based on SLSA compliance and can do a bunch of SLSA verification. And they work, I believe, out of Australia. I think that's what they were saying, or somewhere in the Pacific. They seemed interested in joining as well. Okay, so okay, I see a few other folks, okay. Folks who are joining now, feel free to put your attendance in the meeting notes. And so, yeah, so nothing really on the agenda today outside of so SLSA 1.0, the specification has been getting some feedback back. Most of the feedback is mostly clarifications. It's nothing like, nobody's really said anything specific that they feel like SLSA is bad or that we're totally on the wrong track. It's mostly stuff like, we split up isolated and ephemeral into isolated and ephemeral, and now we've turned it back into, I believe, isolated, where we're trying to say isolated means both isolated and, isolated. We had split it up isolated and ephemeral because ephemeral is kind of like isolated within time, and isolated means, in space kind of thing, where an isolated build should not be able to manipulate other builds that running at the same time. And ephemeral was, hey, builds, a previous build should not impact a future build. And I think the problem is that was also getting confused. And so we just sort of renamed it back to isolated. And we sort of said, what does that mean? It should not be able to, a previous build, we're just saying both of those are just isolated. So, yeah, I think there's some open, there's still some open questions on exact wording, and feel free to kind of put that in there. But there's nothing, I think, nothing really from the tooling perspective that really needs to be there. I think most of the tools that folks have been building should be able to do this sort of thing, right? Where nobody is sort of keeping, or hopefully nobody is claiming SLSA compliance while not cleaning up build environments after they run, and allowing sort of future builds to read stuff from the environments of previous builds. So that's really the only big sort of change I've seen. Like, there's a few other things that are clarifications, like musts versus shoulds and those sorts of things. Arno, is there anything, because I know you've been keeping track of a lot of this, is there anything in any of the rewording that you think impacts how some of the tools should be written?
Well, I'm not sure. There has been so many changes, to be honest, but I think there's definitely been some clarification as to what is expected of the different parties. We try to better specify what's the responsibility of the producer versus the consumer versus the ecosystem, like package, producer kind of distribution ecosystem. And so depending on where you are in that food chain, you probably need to, have a close look at, whether it has impacted you or not. We had some for instance, clarification as to, you know, who sets expectations with regard to what, you know, needs to be verified, and especially between the producer and the consumer. And so in the end, I mean, there were some changes that were contemplated. I think we kind of came back, so it's closer to what it was in the previous version. So there may be less changes now than there was for a moment. I was a bit worried, to be honest, that we were drastically reversing the model. But after some edits, we seem to have come back to something that's much closer to what we had. So I you know, it's hard to say, because like I said, you know, the group has already agreed we would have a release candidate 2. So there's going to be another specification being published with another at least 2-week review period before we call it final. There's been a lot of editorial changes, and this is what makes it a bit challenging. There were so many changes put in, which, you know, don't get me wrong, I think it's for the better. The spec is much better off now, but, you know, it's hard to sometimes identify, okay, is that just editorial? You know, there's been, for instance, some clarification about what isolation means, right? In the case of SLSA builds, and then, you know, versus ephemeral and other things. And so, you know, some of this, depending on how you read it, you know, the clarifications that are being made may not necessarily align with what you expected, the way you know, you individually read the spec in the first place. So for that reason, I'm a bit prudent as to, you know, saying, well, you know, I think everybody has to really take another read and compare, you know, see if it's still in sync with the mental model you had before. Because I think that's where there may be, you know, a bit of a mismatch in some cases, because depending on how you read the spec, because it wasn't so clear, you know, you may have had a different interpretation. That's the way it's been clarified.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, sorry, not sure what happened to my tab here with the.
I wish I could give you a very specific answer with like, yeah, look at those things, but it's a bit difficult.
Cool. I think a lot of details there are changing. So I don't know if there's anybody on this meeting who's actively working on any of the tools. I mean, I know Brendan and myself sort of kind of, but we're very much reliant on the upstream tool that we use, Tecton, to actually support 1.0. But I don't know if there's anybody else who maybe is looking to have their tool, like not you know, they're not looking to necessarily use a tool, but they're looking to sort of implement a tool that could either create SLSA provenance or verify SLSA provenance or validate SLSA provenance, anything like that.
So
No,
IBM
yeah,
definitely
so-
is.
Yeah, there's this runtime attestation that Parth, me, and Aditya, we have been looking into, that creates these runtime attestations for the build. We got the Intuitive spec 0.1 approved with Intuitive team. And I think the idea is to basically have Parth, I think he had some initial implementation for that. We need to, with integration with Tecton chains. So once you run your Tecton pipeline, the attestations, runtime attestations get created. It needs some more work. So we are planning to meet up again later next week, and we can have some more updates then. There's some other work going on with the Tracy team also, and with the Witness. So there are other two tools that are also very interested in doing the similar attestation. So maybe at some point we'll converge and we'll we'll make some decision how we can go forward.
Yeah, I know that this those sorts of runtime attestations were something that was being discussed originally as maybe a way to help prove out SLSA, like something like a SLSA 4, but now with SLSA 4 sort of put on the back burner to a future version. I think in probably soon, one of the things that I think folks, once 1.0 goes out, folks are going to be interested in hearing probably more about that sort of runtime attestation or runtime verification stuff. Because I think that's super important. And one of the things that was, hey, when looking at something like SLSA 4, we had no good way of really understanding like what it actually meant and what sorts of things are we looking for when trying to verify stuff like hermeticity, reproducibility, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there are a few other use cases that I'm trying to explore around how we can, once we generate these attestations, beyond just attestation, can we use that log to get some more insights into the build, right? Like where the dependencies came from, can we generate some bill of material out of it and validate them? So yeah, so maybe in one of the next meeting we can go in, we can present that.
Cool.
In Toto 1.0 was recently released, and they added a new predicate type for, I think it's like runtime tracing as well. Like that would be very related to that discussion, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think I can post the link. So 0.1 for this, we basically proposed that predicate in Toto, and they have basically approved it and merged it as 0.1. Yeah.
Nice. I mean, I can also mention, I think most of you folks already know or heard me talk about it, but of course, my team is working on both SLSA provenance generation and consumption via the NPM CLI and package ecosystem, of course.
Yeah, is that still, is there any updates or is it still just kind of being worked on?
It's no public updates, but I think we should see something pretty soon, I hope. But yeah, we're definitely crunching on it. And of course, NPM CLI is open source. So anyone that's interested can sneak around in the CLI repository if you're curious.
So I was saying that IBM has a product. We have a build pipeline that's in the IBM cloud that we use for our own products, and that is available to customers in the cloud. And it's been beefed up to produce SBOMs for now, and we're looking to producing provenance as well.
Cool. Well, yeah, that I think, second here.
I guess most cloud providers will use some kind of framework like that. I know Google has one, and I expect other cloud providers will all do the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
The IBM one is based on Tecton, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I've talked to Matt, I think, a little bit about that because I know there was some discussion about like, hey, is there any sort of collaboration we could be doing, like, because I know obviously that the IBM one's more internal facing and whatnot, but hey, are there things that like you see that like Fresca, for example, is doing well that could be maybe, or things that are maybe missing for something like a Fresca that folks think should be in there. And I'm still working on that write-up based on the conversation on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, I understand. And so we are actively engaged with the Tecton developers. We have some of my colleagues actually are involved in tech development, and so there are some changes we had to make, for that purpose that we're pushing back into Tecton, so everybody can take advantage of those. We don't have the problem that you have with Fresca, with with Spire, because we don't use that. We have HSM and things like this that do all the management of identity and credentials for us.
Yeah. So one of the things actually I can talk about briefly, if folks are interested, more as one of the tools we're working on as consumers of SLSA. And this is very much it is in no way complete yet, but I just figured just so that folks understand, like one of the things that we've been looking at is, you can produce SLSA, you can consume SLSA at like a one-to-one, hey, I have a package, I want to just sort of verify something about that package. But one of the things that we've been exploring through the project called Guac has been, which is also open source, is trying to kind of see, like, can we combine SBOM data, SLSA data, all this other data into sort of a larger knowledge graph. And before anybody says anything, I want you to know that everybody who, myself and Brendan Lum, who've been working on it, this piece of it, we are not front-end developers, so please don't hate on our UI here. But we have been working on some stuff that, like, just to be clear, this is all in sort of a graph backend, and we ingest gigabytes upon gigabytes of SLSA attestations, SBOMs, so on and so forth. And so, like, you get nodes and edges. And once again, I know that this is not particularly valuable right this second, but, we have folks running stuff like GraphQL queries. Then when running those GraphQL queries, the nodes get re-added. Some of this is right now very POC, but the idea would be those things like where you have SLSA subjects and then you have SLSA materials, or no, sorry, they're now resolved dependencies and those sorts of things. You can then continually follow those resolved dependencies into see if there's other things that are in there. Can kind of go through and fetch sort of additional data and that sort of stuff, like where you'll be able to kind of do a bunch of things on that end. And if I go to show just sort of what the data looks here, if I go and pull up a query in a second. And I open up, where's the queries? Where's this thing? Oh, did we move it out? I might have moved it out already. Hold on. Oh, there it is. Some of the assembler. Okay. Is there a SLSA one? Has SLSA. Okay. So let me go and give me 1 second. And share my screen again. And maybe even make it a little larger here. So, Guac is using sort of a GraphQL API to actually allow folks to sort of access stuff like SLSA. And so the thing here, and a lot of this right now is just junk test data, that kind of stuff. It's not really demonstrative of the actual sort of data, but the idea here is like, you know, we can run queries like, hey, find me all artifacts in my supply chain that have salsa attestations. We are doing stuff like reachability queries, so we can actually sort of say, hey, I have these two artifacts. Is there a chain of salsa attestations between them? Do they all have SBOMs, all that good stuff? Or also stuff like, hey, I have an artifact here, an artifact here. Do they depend on each other in some way? And stuff like that. And so we're able to pull out all the sort of salsa metadata also as well for policy and all that good stuff. And so this is some of the stuff that we're looking, and what obviously right now this is supporting salsa v0.2 spec, but we plan to support 1.0 as soon as that's live. It shouldn't be that bad, but the idea here would be we can go in and, you know, also do queries on stuff like what has salsa but no SBOM, or which of my, you know, if I go in, I say, hey, this thing says it depends on this. Do I have an SBOM that says it depends on it as well? Or is that missing? Right? Like we can do all those sorts of queries to kind of help with policy and all that good stuff. Anyway, that's just something I wanted to kind of bring up just as a thing that, you know, is being worked on right now. And, you know, as sort of a second order salsa tool. Like it's not the tool that like is just purely to sort of pull down salsa and check what's in there right there. It's to go and actually ingest it all so that you can perform analysis on it later.
So Michael, I think have you looked into this Dependabot? So I remember in last Cloud Native Security Con, they presented some analysis where they are basically capturing this. They are also building the graph and they are putting in the build and these attestations and everything in the graph and keeping up the growing dependencies, what change and everything you can highlight. Maybe it is we can sync up with them.
Yeah, no, that's definitely on the list of things there. Yeah, so this is just it's not trying to say specifically this artifact, yada. It's kind of just sort of, in this case, we're just pulling down all of the metadata related to artifacts, and this could be stuff that's internal, this could be stuff that's external, and just kind of going through and it's not necessarily just purely for the like, hey, does this thing have a vulnerability and needs to be updated? It's kind of whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, makes sense. Yep.
Cool. So yeah, I don't know if does anybody have anything else regarding any of the tools side of things that folks wanted to talk over? Because if not, we can kind of end it a half hour early. Probably planning in the next week or so to maybe either have a separate meeting specifically for the folks who are working on some of the other pieces, or potentially change the time of this meeting depending on some of the feedback we get on meeting times. Cool. If there's nothing else, oh, sorry, somebody say something.
I think that sounds good. We can end early. Yeah.
Okay, cool. If not, you can all have a half hour back.
Yeah. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you for generosity. Have a good weekend. Bye.